Hello everyone and happy November. Welcome back to this episode of the Stitch Sessions. And if you are new here, welcome. It's so great to have you coming along with us today, especially since it's the first video of the month. And that means that you are joining us today for our November installment in our Shawl We Crochet series for 2022. For this year's series, we are exploring creating different shawls, different types of shawls, and more importantly, different shapes of shawls. And as you can see here, we are going to work on this gorgeous specimen. I just love how this yarn has a little bit of sparkle running through it. I'm not sure if the camera catches it here. But this is our Ruana shawl. And so basically the shape we're using is two long rectangles that we're sewing together halfway up their length to create this beautiful drapey shawl. Some people might even consider it more like a poncho or a cloak. But I am just over the moon with how this came out. I know I say that with every project. You guys that know me, you know, I just get excited over these things. I just love and adore crocheting so much, and I love when my vision comes to life. So this is one way you can wear it, just kind of simply draped in the front like that, and it creates this lovely collar-like effect, and you can pin it here with a brooch. A little secret here, this is not actually a brooch, this is a hair comb, but it works perfectly as a brooch, and it's smooth enough that it doesn't catch any of the loops there, and then I don't have to worry about having a back or losing a back. But let me just take that out so you guys can see. So when it's just nicely folded like that, it really drapes beautifully. It looks actually like a coat. So perfect for fall weather. And now you can change it. Can change the wrapping, so you can tuck it in a little bit more this way, and then just take this end here and loop it right over. You can create a little cowl effect here, and then your Ruana looks like that, which also has a beautiful effect to it. And it sits fairly long, like it's just on the back. It hits me when I have it on like just slightly below my hips. So for me, that was a great length. You can make yours longer, of course, if you wish. Just keep in mind that the drape will have a little bit of extra length there. And then if you want to secure it where it is, you just take a brooch again and secure it in place. That looks just lovely. I love how this can really elevate a look. It gives that extra little classy look the way it's draped. I just think it's so great, and it's so easy, guys. It's two rectangular panels we put together, and the stitch we're using for this panel is the gorgeous star stitch. Now I adore this stitch. I think it just creates such a beautiful pattern, creates a little bit of a denser fabric, and I know it looks super intricate, but it's actually pretty straightforward. I would call it easy. It's all about just understanding where you're pulling up your loops to create that star effect. And it takes 2 rows to create this stitch. So the panel is quite long, so you're gonna get a lot of great practice. And then the trim here on the edge of our sleeves, I call it, is the diamond stitch, the diamond mesh stitch, sorry. And this is super easy. If you know chains and slip stitches, you are good to go to create this. And that's it, that's all. So the only thing is, you probably want to invest a little bit of time creating it. I used a medium 4-weight yarn. You can definitely use a lightweight number 3. It will take you a little bit longer to create the length that you want, although that would give you a really gorgeous drape. Could you do it with a bulky 5? You could, but I don't think the drape is going to be the same. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just gonna, I think it's gonna be a little bit stiffer. If you want something that has a really soft drape, always go for a lighter weight yarn. Medium 4 is good. A lightweight 3 is fantastic. So without further ado, let's just get on to the materials you're gonna need for this project. Let's get you stitching up your Ruana shawl. So the yarn I'm going to be using, I'm very excited. I used this yarn ages ago to create a capelet for a friend of mine. And I love that they brought this back. It's the Red Heart Comfort, and it's this mauvey color, like a lilac mauvey color with some sparkle running through it, which I think is fantastic. This skein comes in a 340 gram ball and has 600 yards or 548 meters in it. So this should be plenty since we are using it in conjunction with our accent color, which I'll get to in a second. In case you're wondering, this color is gray silver, okay? And it is considered a medium size 4 yarn. The accent color we're going to be using is Bernat Premium Yarn, which is another fantastic yarn I love using. This comes in 198 gram 198 gram skein and contains 360 yards or 329 meters. And the color, the accent color here is just purple violet, okay? And so it should be plenty. This is generally a one size fits all project. But if you need more length or more width, pick up an extra ball. It doesn't hurt, right? It's always good to have extras instead of running out, especially because the dye lot sometimes changes the hue of the color, which I have found out recently in a cardigan project I'm working on, which is coming in a future tutorial. Okay, so that's our yarn. Now, this yarn actually recommends using a size 5mm hook. But I'm actually going to go up a couple of hook sizes, and I'm going to be using a 6mm hook, which is also known as a J or a size 10. And I just want the fabric to drape a little bit more relaxed. And so that's why I've gone up a hook size. Okay, and you will need a darning needle to sew in your ends and a handy pair of scissors to snip off your yarn, of course. Now, if you wanted to use a bulky weight yarn, you can certainly do that. Make sure you use the hook that is recommended for that yarn. And if you wanted to sit a little bit more drapey, do what I did and go up a hook size or 2. That's the thing with bulky yarn, is if you are a tight stitcher, your fabric will be stiff. So just go up a couple of hook sizes and you should be good to go. And let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And we're working this project lengthwise. So we need to do a very long chain that's going to drape over the shoulders and hang down right about just above the knee area, okay? So we're going to chain a total of 201 chains. So we begin 1, 2, and remember not to stitch too tightly because we've got to work our way back into these stitches. Okay, so I've done 201 chains, and so you just want to make sure that your work stays nice and consistent like that. This is the time, if you're making it for yourself or if you have the person you're making it for close by, this is the time to drape this over their shoulders. So generally, you've got a nice long length for your Ruana, right? So you want to just make sure, these are the two ends, and so you're going to drape it over your shoulders and check out the length. Remember, there's a little bit of stretch here right now. There may be some slight shrinkage as we place more stitches into it. But if you would like it to be longer, now is the time to add more chains, okay? I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to leave it as such. So I have 201 stitches. And by the way, because we are working the star stitch, to create any length that you want to make sure that you do it in an even number. So set multiples of 2, and then add 1 more chain at the end. So in my case, I've done 200 chains. Once I've gotten the number or the length that I want, then I'll add 1 more at the end for turning. Okay, so I have 201. If you decide to go ahead and do 250, for example, then you would do 250 plus 1 more chain at the end. If you do 300 chains, you would do 300 plus one more chain at the end. So now we're ready to begin row 1, which is our star stitch. Okay, so here we go. What you're going to do is you want to insert your hook into the second chain from the hook. So the loop that's on the hook never counts. So we have 1 and 2. You're going to insert your hook into that chain and pull up a loop. Okay? Then you're going to go into the next chain and pull up another loop. You now have 3 loops on the hook. You're going to go into the next chain and pull up a loop. So you have 4 loops on your hook. So whenever you start the row of star stitches, the first row, it's a 2-row repeat. So for row 1, you want to keep inserting until you have 6 loops on the hook. So I'm going to insert into the next stitch. Whoops. Pull up another loop and then into the very next stitch and pull up 1 more loop. So now I have 2, 4, 6 loops on my hook. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 6 of those loops. And that starts to form the first portion of your star. You will then yarn over and chain 1, and this is what closes up the center of your star like that, okay? When you chain 1, make sure you don't do it too tightly because we are now going to work back into that little eye there. So that is the beginning of the row 1 repeat. And now for every other stitch all the way through, this is how you're going to create your star. So you will insert your hook back into the eye of that previously formed star. So you have 1 loop. And then you want to look at all these little legs here of your star, and you want to separate the one to the left, the leftmost leg there, and you're going to insert your hook just nestled in between there to pull up the next loop. Okay, so you have 3 loops on the hook. And now what you're going to do is you're going to go into the chain where you pulled up the last loop to create this star. So wherever it's been worked into, the last one that's been worked into, which is right there. So I'm going to insert my hook. I now have 4 loops on the hook. And now I'm going to use the next 2 chains to pull up the final 2 loops. So I will insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop, then I will insert into the next stitch and pull up another loop. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops. I will yarn over and pull through all 6 of those loops. And this is where it's important not to be pulling loops too tightly or you won't get them through. And then lastly, you chain 1 to create the eye. So we now have 2 half stars nestled one into the other. So once we get onto row 2, you'll see how it finishes the full form of the star. But for now, row 1 is going to continue this way. You will always insert your hook into the eye of the star first. Then you will go down to all the legs that come out here, and you're going to find the first one on the left, and you're going to insert your hook in between there, okay? Insert to pull up the next loop. Then you want to find the last stitch that was just worked, which is right there. It's usually a little stretched out because it's a chain. And now you have 4 loops. And now you're going to do the same thing into the next 2 chains. So we have the next chain and the next chain, and you have 6 loops on your hook. So it can look a little bit daunting, but if you always remember that you just need to make sure you have 6 loops on your hook, it should steer you well, okay? Then you'll yarn over and then just gently pull through all 6 loops and then chain 1. Remember to chain that one a little looser, okay? So we've now created 3 stars. And that is what you're going to do all the way down until you get to the very end of your chain. And once you get down to the end, I'll meet back up with you when you've got 1 more star to do, okay? So if you have any issues, just pause the video and go back and just recap how to insert your hook. Just remember, you always want 6 loops on the hook, okay? So I will probably see you back here in a little bit once you've finished your first row. Okay guys, so once you've come to the very end of your row, you will have just chained one to finish your last star stitch. And what we're going to do is into that last chain that you just worked out of, we're going to place a half double crochet. And this is the way you'll always end every odd numbered row or row one of our repeat. So you'll yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all three. And that is how you end row one of our star stitch pattern. Okay, so on to row two, we're going to chain two and turn our work. Okay, now for row two, it's fairly simple. We're always going to look for those little eyes that we created, those little circles that we created with our star. Okay, and into that circle, so my first circle is right here, we're going to place 2 half double crochets. So we'll yarn over into the eye there of the star. I will 1 half double crochet and then 1 more half double crochet. And that actually completes the face of our star. So if I turn this over, because this is the front, now we can see all the little legs on the bottom are now being met with the legs on the top. First one, maybe you might not still see it, but let's do it a few more times. So I'm going to find my next little eyelet there, see right there, and I'm going to place 2 half double crochets into it. So there's 1 and there's 2. Okay, again into the next eyelet, which is right there. They really do show themselves, so it makes it much easier for you to find. So there's 1 and there's 2. So row 2, I would say, is much easier than row 1. Pretty straightforward. There you go. So now you can really see that star shape coming to life. I just love how that turned out. And that's what you're going to do all the way to the end of row 2. And then I'm going to talk to you about row 3. So go ahead and finish row 2 with 2 half double crochets into each of our little eyelets there. Okay, once you've completed the very last eye there with 2 half double crochets, what you want to do is find the top of that chain 3 that you did at the beginning, and it's going to be right there, and you're just going to place a half double crochet into that stitch just to round out your edge there. Okay, so if you turn your work, that was the chain that came around for row 1. There's row 2 that we just finished. We placed a half double crochet there. So that is the repeat for this pattern, row 1 and 2. We are going to do something a little bit different in row 4, so hang in with me. I'm going to start you off on row 3. So for row 3, we're basically beginning our star pattern again. Okay, so we're going to do the bottom little legs of our stars. So you always begin a star row with chaining 3. You'll turn your work, and you're going to find the second chain, and you'll insert your hook into that chain to pull up your first loop. Then you'll go into the next chain, pull up the next loop, and now you're going to go into that very first stitch, which is the base of that chain 3 we just created. So you'll go into that stitch to pull up the next loop, and now you'll go into the next 2 stitches to pull up the next loops. So remember, we're always looking to have 6 loops on our hook. So we have 2, 4, and 6. Okay, you'll yarn over and pull through, and then chain 1 to create our little eye. And there you go. So you know the drill now. You then go back into that little eye there, pull up your first loop. Now you're going to find that first leg on the left of your star and pull up the next loop from there, and into the last stitch that was worked, we insert, and then into the next 2 stitches. So we have 1 and 2, and again I have 6 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of them. Okay, And that is how we are going to continue on for row 3. So go ahead and do that. And then I will meet you at the end of row 3 because what's going to happen is we're going to momentarily change colors. So meet you back here in a bit. Okay, I'm just finishing up row number 3. And remember, you want to place, when you finish your last star stitch, you want to go back into that very last stitch worked and place a half double crochet. And this keeps your edges nice and even, just like that. Okay, and there you have the end of row 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to snip my yarn here and just set it aside momentarily. And I'm just going to chain 1 and pull through there. Okay, and it's the reason why I'm cutting it is because we're only going to add 1 row of the accent color and we're going to go back to the mauve color, but we'll be on the other end. So there's no point in leaving your yarn on there. So I'm now going to introduce my purple, and that's what's going to finish off the second row of our star stitch. And it just creates this really, really cool effect. So I'm bringing in my purple here, and right into that last stitch, I'm just going to insert my hook. And I'm going to pull the yarn through. Now, some of you might like to put a slip knot on your hook first. You can definitely go ahead and do that. Sometimes I don't like to do that just because I find it becomes a little bulky in that area, but it works just as well if you do a slip knot. So I'm just going to pull that through. And now I'm going to chain 2 like I normally would do to begin my row 2 of the star stitch. I'll turn my work. Oh, now what I want to do is I want to find my little eyelets here, like I did before, of the star stitch, and into each little eyelet I'm going to place 2 half double crochets. So again, I'm just putting those tails out of the way. So there's my first eyelet there. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, half double crochet, and then place another one into that same space. Okay, so exactly what we did in row 2. So I'm going to do that again. Find the next little eyelet right there. Insert. Pull through all 3. And one more. So what the darker color does, it just gives it this really cool contrast. And it creates a kind of a neat little subtle design. Just going to do one more here. Okay, so you can already see it happening there. So 2 half double crochets into each stitch. So when you turn your work around to the front of your work, you can see it creates this really cool effect. So it's dipping down into the star. And I really like it. It's just something a little subtle, but a little different. Okay, so for row 4, that is basically all you're going to do. Is you're going to repeat row number 2, 2 half double crochets into each stitch, and then you will place a half double crochet into the very last stitch, and you will snip off your yarn. So this is for now the only time you're going to see this purple color now for a long, long time. So go ahead and do that, and then we will talk about how you're going to create the rest of your panel. And I have finished row number 4. So now I'm just going to snip off my yarn. You don't need to leave too much of a tail. We're going to weave that in afterwards and fasten off. So when you turn your work to face the right side, your fabric is looking like this. So you can see the bottom half of the star with the mauve and then the top half with the purple. And from afar, it just creates this funky little jagged edge. So that's one of the purple accents for now. And we're not going to deal with the purple now for quite a while. You're going to create the rest of your panel. So this is where you would reintroduce your first color. Okay. And you're going to do exactly what we did before. You're going to insert your hook into that very first stitch. Pull your yarn through, and you're going to chain 3, because remember we are now back to repeating row 1. okay? And then you can either work over your tail as you go or weave it in at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to take you through the beginning of this again. So this is your row 1 of your star stitch. You're always going to repeat row 1 and 2, 1 and 2. From the second chain, insert your hook to pull up a loop. Into the next chain, insert your hook and pull up a loop. And into the stitch you just worked into, insert and pull up a loop. Okay, so that's going to give you 4 loops right now. Now you're going to work into the next 2 stitches. So you know the drill now with the star stitch, yeah? I'm just going to get this out of the way for a moment. Okay, so you pull through all 6 of those. Chain 1, okay? And there you have it. So you are going to be so professional and proficient at the star stitch by the end of this. So what you're going to do now is continue to repeat row 1 and 2 until you get a total of 34 rows. Okay? And once you've reached row number 34, what we're going to do is we're going to reintroduce our purple color back in. So you'll notice that that row number is an odd number, and that means that you're going to end on the bottom portion of the star. That will be the last row you will have created. And then the second row of the star, that's where we're going to reintroduce our purple, but that won't be for a while. So you're going to pause this video and most likely work on this for a little while. Maybe you're going to watch your favorite Netflix show, and then you're going to meet me back here to talk about reintroducing that purple one more time. Okay guys, so I have finished my panel and I used the entire ball of that red heart yarn. Okay, so my sparkle yarn gave me 1 panel here. Okay, we're not quite finished. We're going to add on some coloring here. So right now my width is about 13.5 inches, which is about 35 centimeters. So I definitely need more width, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an accent with my purple. So remember we did that purple there at the top, just a little accent. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring back our purple yarn, and we're going to add a little bit of a trim row just to finishing up here. Really super simple. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that right now. Okay, so what we want to do, I just love how that star stitch came out. So what we want to do here is you want to just turn your panels so that your silver gray color is the one on the top. So you've just finished your last star stitch row. And FYI, for me, I ended up having 15 rows of stars. That means I had 30 rows in total because remember, our star stitch requires 2 rows to create the motif. So this is the front of my work where I can see the stars. And when I turn it over, you can see that you can't see the stars. So that's the back of our work. So we want to just go to the front and go where you snipped off your yarn. And I'm just going to introduce now or reintroduce our purple color. And you can certainly place a slip knot on your hook to begin. Sometimes I'm not in the mood for a slip knot. I just like to go into the very last stitch, insert my hook, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook the purple color here, and I'm going to pull it through, and then I just flip over the tail across it and I chain 1, and that does plenty to secure it there. Okay, so what we're going to do is keep it nice and simple. We're going to place 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way down the row. What we're going to do though is we are going to work into the back loops only. Now just take a look at your work here. So this is the front where your stars are, and that's the top of the half double crochets you did in the previous row. So with half double crochets, they have loops on 2 sides. They have the V's on the front, and then they have the V's on the top. So we want to really be aware. We're going to be working into the back loops only of the V's on the top because we actually want to push these V's to the front to give us a nice, really crisp edge. So we're going to yarn over and right into that very first stitch there, right there. We're going to insert our hook to pick up the back loop only. Again, I'm just working over my tail there. Pull up a loop, 3 loops, yarn over, and resolve like a normal half double crochet. So I'm going to do that again. Actually, I'm going to move these out of the way just so it doesn't confuse you guys. So I'm going to yarn over, find my next stitch. Remember, this is the side of the stitch. We want to go down into the front, pick up the back loop, whoops, pull that up, and then yarn over. Okay, so again, yarn over, into the back loop, pick up a stitch, or pick up a loop, I should say, and pull through 2. So what that's going to do is it's going to leave these side V's pushing to the front, and the top loops there create a beautiful finished edge connected to your purple there. Okay, and you are going to do that all the way down until you get to the end of your row. And basically, we're going to do 3 rows of half double crochets, just 1 into each stitch. And what I'm going to do, most of you, if you're fairly comfortable with this, you'll know that when you get to the end of your row, you want to chain 1. I know sometimes we chain 2, but I'm going to chain 1 in this project. Turn your work and go back into the same stitch. So what I will do, I will complete row 1 of this trim, and then I'll come back for those of you that are a little bit newer and just need a little extra guidance, and I will take you through that. For the rest of you, just go ahead and finish 3 rows of the purple and then fasten off, and I'll meet up with you guys then. Okay, so I've come to the end of my row and I did my last stitch. I'm just gonna undo this here because I want you guys to see something. It's so easy to just go into the last stitch and think that you are done. But remember that when you stitch, when you're looking at the back side, the loop of that stitch sits to the left. And remember that we have that chain 2 at the end. So you want to make sure, if you want to keep your stitch count even, to get to the top of that chain 2 right there. Okay, and that is your final stitch. So basically, when you come to the end of your row, you're going to chain 1 in this case, turn your work, and then you're going to go right back into that first stitch, or the last stitch you just did, and you're going to half double crochet right into that. So now what we're doing is we're just going to work into the full stitch, okay? And just do what you were doing previously, 1 half double crochet into every single stitch. Okay, so for those of you that are super new, I just wanted to guide you through that. And I know it looks like it's kind of veering out a little bit, but it will all work out once we work up the whole look. So go ahead and finish the second row, chain 1, turn your work, and then do a 3rd row. At that point, you can then snip off your yarn, and we'll be ready to then work on the other side of our panel. You thought I was done with this. No, I am not. So just go ahead, finish those 3 finishing rows, and then I'll meet back up with you to talk about the embellishment we're going to do on the outside edge. Okay, so I have finished my 3 rows. Now you can see it's rippling a little bit, and that is because the purple yarn, although these are both considered a medium 4-weight yarn, you're going to notice this sometimes when you come across using different textures of yarn for projects. These are the same weight category, but this purple one is actually has a bit more of a slightly thicker consistency. Thicker is not the right word, but it definitely has more girth to it, we'll say. So, and you can really see in the project here, I use the exact same number of stitches that I had here, but because again of the way the yarn is, it's buckling a wee bit. So I don't worry about these things, and I like it when these things happen during tutorials because that way you guys can see that it's normal, it happens. A lot of times with some blocking, this can solve itself, especially when you put it in the wash for the first time. As always, wash and gentle. These kind of things tend to work themselves out, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. This thicker edge here is going to be what's kind of considered our collar or our inner collar. And so what we're going to do is the final touch for this panel is to now work the rest of the length using the diamond mesh stitch that we're going to create here along the side. So that's what we're going to do next to finish off our panel. Okay, so we've got our yarn here. So what I want to do is make sure that I have the right side facing up. That means you can see the stars facing you. When you face the back, see there, you don't see any stars. And we are going to start along this edge here. And so what we're going to do is you can start by placing a slip knot on your hook. In this case, I am just going to find the very first stitch there. When I pull that up, it is right there. I'm going to insert my hook, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook that yarn through. I like to throw the tail over to the other side, and then I chain one. And for me, that definitely locks it in. I'm not worried about it going anywhere, and I can always sew these tails in afterwards. So what we're going to do to create our diamond mesh stitch is we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure you can see where your stitches are. We're going to skip the next stitch, which would be this one right here, and into the following stitch. Oops, let's make sure we can see where they are. So this is the first stitch. The next stitch is right here. Sometimes you have to pull your work apart a little bit. And then the following stitch is this one here. Let me make sure that's correct. Yes. So into that stitch, we are then going to slip stitch. And what that does is that is going to create what looks like a little loop, okay? Then we chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. You'll skip the next stitch. Again, because this is actually our starting chain, you just want to stretch out your work a little bit so you can see the stitches. So I've worked into this one, the next one is right there, and then the following one is here. So you always want to skip one and then slip stitch into the following stitch. And you can see that it's creating a nice little arch there. And that is what you're going to do all the way down for this very first row of our mesh stitch. Chain 3 again, 1, 2, 3. Again, skip the following stitch and into the next stitch, which most of the time that stitch we want to go into is quite visible. And you insert your hook and you slip stitch. Okay? So even on its own, if this were the only row we were doing, which it's not, but even just to do something like this for a cute little border, a simple border on something would look really, really nice. But we are going to do many rows of this. So what you're going to do is continue on all the way until you get to the end there, okay? And then I'll meet you at the end to talk about moving on to the second row of our diamond mesh stitch. Okay, so I've just done my last 3 chains, and in fact, I have 3 stitches left at the end. So instead of just skipping 1, what we're going to do is just go ahead and skip 2 and go right into the last stitch there. And it should be the top of that chain 2 there, and slip stitch like usual. So there we go. And that just creates it nice and even. And I love, actually, if this was a little wider, I would have just left it like this. I just love how this little scallop really looks next to that star stitch. It looks really, really pretty, especially with the contrasting color. Okay, we're actually going to do several more rows of this. So this is how you would begin every subsequent row from now on. So you would chain 3 and turn. And what you're going to do is you're going to work into these loop spaces now. So you've got your first loop space here, and all you're going to do is you're going to slip stitch into that loop space. Chain 3, find the next space, and slip stitch into that. And that's basically it. 1, 2, 3, and into the loop space. And there you have it. And that's what creates, once you do several more rows, that's what creates that diamond shape. See, if I pull it up like that, it becomes like a diamond. So go ahead and do that. And this is now the first time we're going to have loops that we're working into. So I am going to meet you at the end of row 2 just to make sure that it all makes sense to you. So now it's going to be super easy. Just chain 3 and slip stitch into the next loop, okay? I will meet you back here in a little bit to talk about ending off row 2 and going on to row number 3. Okay, so I have completed now row number 2 with all my loops. And so when you come to the end, you'll have one loop left, and all you're going to do is you're simply just going to go into that loop and slip stitch, okay? And then you're just going to chain 3, turn your work again, and I've got quite a bit here to turn. And then you're just going to do what you did previously. So you're always just going to go right into that very first loop that you see, which is right there, and slip stitch. And it's always going to even out, and you've got that loop there. And then you continue on, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, slip stitch to join. And this is going to create a nice little lacy section to your Ruana. And so go ahead and continue doing this. I'm going to do this for 39 rows. And of course, you may need more rows or less rows depending on how long you want it. You want to make sure that when it's draping on you and your arms are at your side, that it's going to rest somewhere around your wrist area. That's generally kind of the length that people bring it to. So that's all that's left to do for your panel. So go ahead and do that, and then I will come back and just touch base with you for the final reveal of the panel, and then we'll talk about replicating it to create 2 panels and then putting our Ruana together. So put on your favorite show and continue with your mesh stitch. Okay, so I finally finished both of my panels. So I have something that looks like this. So this is where you can see that mauvey star stitch we did with the sparkle running through it. I love it. Got that little purple detail here, another couple rows of the star stitch, and then we had the diamond mesh stitch here. So that is how that's looking. I just love the stretch of it. So this is how each panel looks, right? We anchored it with the purple. So there's one, and here is my second one. So what we're going to do is we're going to first of all determine which is the back and which is the front. So the back is, you can see where that purple met with the mauve and the star stitch. There's a little bit of what looks like stitching here. So that is the back. So if you turn it over, you can see that it just sits nicely flush. So that is our front. So once I've got the front determined, I'm going to take my panels and I'm going to fold them nicely in half. So just make sure that the tips fit nicely. And there we have it. And I just love how that mesh stitch creates a little bit of a ruffle, a flare. Just love it. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take the other panel and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to find my right side. Yeah, so that is the wrong side. You can see it has the stitching. This is my right side. And I'm going to make sure that I fold this nicely in half. Just like that. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I want to place these 2 panels side by side with this, the thinner purple band kind of facing each other. So I'm folding them in half because this is the way it's going to drape over your body, right? So you have an opening here. And so whatever side you determine is going to be the back. So for me, this is going to be my back. And I'm going to show you why in a second. Okay, so once you have that lined up, I would place a pin here. Okay, just so that you can know where the join is. Now the best thing to do is actually count up the number of stitches from the bottom to that top part so that you know exactly where your middle join is, okay? And if you still have the same consistent number of stitches, okay, so you want to count up the number of stitches up to the edge there, and you want them to be equal. So we know that we have 200 stitches that create one long panel. So half of that would be 100. So you want to find your 100th stitch on each panel, and you want to pin them together. This way it's just easy to know when to stop it, especially for those of you that don't like to count. So I'm going to grab a stitch marker and pin my 100 stitches. Okay, so I've pinned my 100th stitch on each side together, so at least I know where to stop. So now I'm going to turn this over to show you why I'm choosing to make the other side the back. I mean, technically, these are all the same. The panels are made the same. However, you may notice right here, I have a little bit of an extra width in my purple. And that is because right about here, I was just in the very last row of my star stitch, I ran out of this yarn. Now I had already fully completed this panel, and I was just at the very end. I basically had about 75 stitches left when I ran out of that yarn. Now there's no way I was going to go buy that whole ball of yarn just to finish off that row. So I just decided I was going to pick it up with the purple, and it's too bad it didn't happen right up at the corner, because then you really couldn't tell. It's over the shoulders. But in any case, this will be facing the back. It's not a big deal. It's very subtle, and you'd really have to pay attention to notice it. So you'll just see, if you really look, you can see that there's a little bit of a jut there, but I am not worried about it at all. So now we've got our panels. They're folded, they're pinned. Let's begin now sewing up the back seam of our Ruana, and we are pretty much done. So let's get started on this. Okay, so see how these are the right sides facing out? So what I want to do now is I actually want to turn them so that they have their wrong sides facing out. Because we're going to be using the slip stitch method, I want my seam to sit on the inside of my work. So this is the back side and this is the back side. So the right sides are facing each other, okay? Just like that. And by the way, this is what I have left from my second purple skein. So just in the nick of time. I probably will have some left over to make another small project. Okay, so we're going to start by placing a slip knot on our hook. And what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into that very first stitch, which is right there. Hopefully you can see that. I know the purple is a little bit darker. And now I'm going to pick up the back panel, and I'm going to find the very first stitch on that one. So see, there are my stitches. And this was a chain 2, it looks like. So I'm going to insert there. So I've got the loop on my hook, and I've got the hook through the front panel and the back panel. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull through and slip stitch. So just be gentle. Pull through, and pull through. Done. These two pieces are now attached together. This is what you're going to do for every single stitch until you reach your stitch marker. So this is called the slip stitch sewing method. So now I'm going to find the next stitch, which is right there. And I'm going to go into the corresponding next stitch to that, which is, let me make sure that's correct, which is right there. And I'll just leave these tails out of the way. So, and then you're just going to pull through all of these loops. There's your next slip stitch. And then you go into the following stitch and do the same thing. Following stitch there, and then you find the next stitch in the back panel, and you pull through all of them. You might have to be gentle because sometimes you pick up other loops along the way there. There we go. And then one more time, going into the next stitch right there, into the next stitch there, and pull through. Okay, I actually didn't do it one more time, and then I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. Just like that. Okay, so you're just going to have a little bit of a ridge here. I mean, I don't know if you can see it on camera. It's very subtle. But when I turn my work over, see, it's just very seamless. So those two purple sides are just going to meld right into each other. And that's it. So guys, I'm going to leave you for a little bit. You're going to slip stitch those back panels together all the way up until you hit your stitch marker. And then we're just going to snip our yarn and fasten off, and our Ruana is complete. Okay, of course, you're just going to have to do in some tails and things like that. But I'm going to meet up with you at the end, and we can celebrate the victory of completing our Ruana together. All right, guys, so this is the completed shawl, and I wanted to show it to you first this way so you can really get a feel for what's happening here. So we've got one panel on each side, and then we sewed it halfway up. And so that's essentially what you have. It basically looks like one huge rectangle, or maybe even a square, depending on how long you made your sides, that's got a slit in the middle, basically. So this is the wrong side. So this is the inside, and there's our mesh stitch there. It just comes out so beautifully. And so basically then what you do is you're going to fold down these sides here, just like that. And now, so now you've got your neck opening here and your inner collar, and then now you've got your side. So this is what it looks like now. So one kind of rectangle going this way, and this creates a beautiful flare when it's draped over you. And of course, you saw at the intro how it was draped on the mannequin. So it really has a lot of flair. It's definitely nice and cozy, so it's perfect for fall. And that's it. So you've got your opening here, and you can drape it in several different ways, however you like. And then you can always pin it if you want or not, but that is it. It doesn't kind of do it justice laying flat like this, but again, I just wanted to show you basically how wide this thing will go and how long it will be. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to film this and handle the shawl at the same time. So as I said in the intro, this falls just below, just a little bit below my hips, which is a great length for me. You can certainly make yours much longer. But that's the beauty of these types of designs. If it even gives you a cool idea of how you can create your own Ruana, then fantastic, right? So I hope you enjoyed working on the star stitch. Definitely, I know you got lots of practice doing that. And we've got the diamond mesh stitch, which is just beautiful when you're using a little bit of a thicker yarn. I just love it. So if you have any questions about this shawl or any of the shawls that we worked on in this series so far, just make sure to leave it for me in the comment box down below. And by the way, I'll also leave a link to the playlist of our entire series that we've done so far in the description as well. It's Shall We Crochet 2022. If this is your first time joining us, there's lots of shawl tutorials for you to check out. And we've got one more left. Can you guys believe it? So December's shawl, boy, oh boy, it's going to be a doozy. Such a great shawl shape we're going to take on. So you definitely have to make sure you tune into the first Wednesday of December to find out what our final shawl installment is. Now, if you prefer to email me directly, I know a few of you have, and I'm always happy to receive your messages. Just email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. Now, don't forget, come visit me on my website, crochetcrafty.com, where you will find all kinds of cool crochet goodies, one of which is sign up for my monthly newsletter. I gift you a free written pattern every month, along with a lot of extra behind the scenes photos and details on a lot of the tutorials that we've worked on. On the website, you'll also find cool things like measuring charts for other crochet items, and many things like that. If you're looking for more patterns, I am continuously trying to work on beefing up my supply of patterns on my Etsy shop. It's a slow go because it's just me. So between doing videos and writing patterns, I'm getting there. I appreciate so much those of you that have come and purchased a pattern from the shop. I really appreciate it. It really helps me to make the channel a lot better and help me to grow the channel and share my love of crochet with you guys. So if you feel that you have any friends that may find these tutorials helpful, please feel free to share it with them. And if you are new here and you've liked this tutorial, I invite you to press that subscribe button, become a Crochet Crafty member, come hang out with me. I upload a brand new tutorial every Wednesday morning. And as we get closer to the holidays, you'll notice I will be uploading a little bit more frequently leading up to the holiday season. So lots of fun stuff for that. In fact, there is a bonus video coming out this Sunday. So stay tuned for that. I adore spending time with you all so much. Thank you for hanging out with me. Hope you have an amazing day. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves as always and each other. Be well, be happy, and I will see you all in next week's session. Bye-bye.